My own mother. Said children were evil, tried to terminate my pregnancy. Without my consent, broke into our house, lied to CPS and HR, and then stalked me across state lines until we escaped. My mom hates children more than anyone I've ever met. When I was a kid, she would straight up ignore me and had a babysitter literally raise me until I turned 14. I always asked her why she had me if she disliked kids, and she would tell me it was a mistake. Well, I've always been completely opposite to my mom, and have always dreamed of having a really big family. But whenever I told my mom about how she'd be an amazing grandmother, she'd shut it down, saying kids are a waste of time. She'd say that was time I could be using to take care of her. I remember feeling crushed, but I also knew in the back of my mind that my mom's opinion wasn't right, and I could live life independent from her wants when I grew up. Fast forward to now. I'm 28 and pregnant. My bump was huge, so I knew it was finally time to bite the bullet. And at the last family reunion, I did just that. My husband was someone my entire family, even my mom, had approved of. And one time she even made a joke that if I had babies with anyone, it should be with him. So when we knocked on my mom's door, I actually had a smile on my face until she opened it. Her eyes immediately welled with tears. Please tell me you just got fat. I'm pregnant, Mom. Her fist clenched by her side, and for a second I thought my husband would have to step in to protect me. How could you do this to me? After everything. In response, I didn't shout, leave, cry, none of that. I did what the pregnancy hormones told me to do. I went in to hug my mom. I guess the little girl in me just wanted her support. But instead of hugging me back, or even just standing there, she pushed me off on my belly so hard it almost unalived my baby. My husband held me, and I could tell he wanted to defend me, but I gave him a hand gesture as if to say, it's not worth it. So finally, we started to walk away. The second we got to the car, my phone was buzzing with messages. My mom was spamming me with links to pregnancy termination clinics, their opening hours, and even money to have the procedure done. I immediately broke into tears. My husband lunged at me for a hug and reassured me that any mother would be lucky to have me as a daughter. I asked him if we could do the thing, and he held my hand and said yes. You see, with the pregnancy hormones, I've been getting upset a lot more than usual, and the only thing that's helped me is by talking to myself out loud how I plan to talk to my daughter. You can think of it like a coping mechanism. And 5 minutes into this, I realized my mom was batshit crazy, because I would never force my daughter to end the family bloodline. I wouldn't tell every boyfriend she brought home that she was too unstable to raise a child. I wouldn't congratulate her when she had a miscarriage. I wouldn't encourage her to smoke at a young age just to promote infertility. And most importantly, I wouldn't attack her when she came home with a baby bump. For the first time, everything became clear. Her behavior wasn't my fault. I didn't have to please her anymore. My husband must have seen the look of realization on my face because he just said, I'm so proud of you. But his words were distant, far away, because my mind was clouded with anger, fury. I practically slammed the car door open and stomped to my mom's front door, with one hand on my belly and the other in a clenched fist by my side. She opened it, and this time she was the one to hug me. Honey, you won't regret this. I stared at her eyes, right into her soul. Mom, I'm going to give birth. Me and my husband are going to raise my beautiful baby girl, and we are going to have a beautiful family together. The more I spoke, the angrier she got. And by the time I was done, her face was ghost white, and I actually thought she was going to pass out. She really looked like she was at a loss for words, but I was wrong. So after everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? You're a perfect example of why no one should ever have kids. Everything? I erupted. You barely acknowledged my presence until I turned 14. And even then, I was more like a slave than your daughter. I could tell she wasn't expecting me to respond, because she just stared at me with her mouth slightly open. But I kept going. Do you remember the first doll that I brought home? You cut it into pieces from the neck down, and threw the parts all around the house and forced me to clean it up. That was for your own good? Enough. I interrupted. I had had enough. My husband lightly put his hand on my lower back, and we just left. As he drove us home, I was completely silent. I felt my baby kicking, and knew she could never meet her grandmother. But above all else, I was filled with regret. Regret for how I had let her treat me, how long I had been walking on eggshells around her, how I had spent my whole life trying to make her happy. But that regret was soon replaced with anger again. I knew I had to do something, not just for me, but for my baby girl, because my mother was coming back into my life, as she did not want me to have a baby. Later that night after we got home, I sat at our kitchen table staring at my phone. The screen showed dozens of messages from my mom, each one more desperate than the last. The most recent one read, I'm coming over tomorrow. We need to talk about this rationally. My stomach dropped. The thought of facing her again made me physically ill. Ben noticed my expression and took the phone from my hand. His face darkened as he scrolled through the messages. You don't have to see her, he said firmly. We can change the locks, get cameras, whatever you need. I shook my head. That won't stop her. You don't know her like I do. And he didn't. My mom had this way of worming into people's lives, making herself seem reasonable to outsiders while terrorizing me in private. She was charming when she needed to be, convincing. She managed to turn family members against me before when I didn't do what she wanted. Her manipulation tactics were refined to an art form over decades. I grabbed my phone back and pulled up my contacts. I scrolled until I found Aunt Susan, my mom's sister. They hadn't spoken in years, and I'd always wondered why. Maybe it was time to find out. Perhaps understanding my mother's past would help me secure my daughter's future. What are you doing? Ben asked as I hit the call button. Getting answers, I replied, as the phone began to ring. I stared at the coffee table in my Aunt Susan's living room, trying to process what she just told me. I'd spent the last hour listening to her explain my mom's childhood, and holy crap, it was messed up. So my grandmother actually locked her in closets? I asked, still struggling to believe it. Aunt Susan nodded grimly. Your grandmother was severely mentally ill. She'd lock your mom away for days, telling her children were curses. Your grandfather wasn't much better. I sat back on her floral couch, mind racing. Susan had agreed to meet us the day after my confrontation with my mom. When I called her, she'd gone quiet for a moment before asking if I was sitting down. Now I understood why. That still doesn't excuse how she treated me, I said, rubbing my belly protectively. Of course not, Susan replied. It's why I got contact. She refused therapy, refused to acknowledge the trauma, but it might help you understand. Ben squeezed my hand. So you think this is why she hates children so much? Because of her own childhood? Susan nodded. She swore she'd never have kids, and she got pregnant with you. Your father talked her out of abortion, promising to be the primary caregiver. When he died in that car accident, I was 4, I whispered. I barely remember him. After that, she just checked out, hired help, pushed you away. I tried to intervene, but she threatened restraining orders. The truth landed like a brick in my stomach. No wonder my childhood memories of her were so cold. She'd been damaged, broken by her own parents, and instead of healing, she just passed that trauma right along to me. I felt a kick inside my belly and placed my hand over the spot. My daughter would never experience that cycle. She's been texting me nonstop, I said. Says she's coming over today to fix this problem. Susan's expression hardened. Patricia always thought she could control everything. Don't let her anywhere near you. We left with Susan's promise to support us and a folder full of childhood photos she'd saved of me, ones my mother had discarded. As we drove home, I scrolled through increasingly desperate texts from my mom. The last one sent chills down my spine. If you won't handle this, I will. When we got home, I noticed a familiar car parked down the street. That's my mom's car, I told Ben, panic rising in my throat. Stay in the car, Ben said, suddenly alert. I'll check the house first. I clutched his arm. No, we should call the police. Let me just make sure she's actually broken in before we do that, he insisted. I watched nervously as Ben approached our front door, which appeared undamaged. He used his key, disappeared inside, then reappeared moments later, giving me a thumbs up. I exhaled shakily and waddled up our walkway. Our house seemed untouched, but I felt uneasy. Why is her car here if she's not? Ben locked the door behind us. Maybe she's walking around the neighborhood. I'll check the backyard. While Ben checked outside, I wandered into our kitchen for water. That's when I noticed it. The drawer where we kept important documents was slightly ajar. I pulled it open and immediately felt sick. My prenatal vitamins were there, but the seal was broken and they looked different. Ben, I yelled, panic rising. Something's wrong with my vitamins. He rushed in, took one look at the bottle and grabbed it. Don't touch them. Did you take any today? No, I forgot this morning, I said, suddenly grateful for my pregnancy brain. Do you think she... The doorbell rang, making us both jump. Through the peephole, I saw my mother, smiling pleasantly like nothing was wrong. Ben pocketed the vitamin bottle and opened the door just a crack, blocking her view of me. Patricia, this isn't a good time, he said firmly. Nonsense, she replied, her voice sickly sweet. I brought lunch for my daughter. We need to talk things through rationally. I stepped into view, keeping my distance. Mom, did you break into our house? Her smile faltered for just a second. What? Of course not. The spare key is still where you always keep it, under the turtle figurine. I just wanted to tidy up before you got home. Ben tensed beside me. We never told you about that key. An uncomfortable silence fell. My mom's expression shifted, the pleasant mask slipping to reveal something colder underneath. Well, Jennifer must have mentioned it. Get out, I said, suddenly feeling stronger than I had in years. And give me back your key. Sweetie, you're being emotional. The hormones. Now, I shouted, surprising even myself. Reluctantly, she reached into her purse and placed a key on our entryway table. I'm just trying to help you. That baby will ruin your life just like you ruined mine. Ben stepped forward. Leave, or we call the police. After she left, I collapsed onto our couch, shaking. What was in those vitamins? Do you think she tampered with them? Ben called his brother, a pharmacist, who told us to bring the pills in immediately. I called my OB while Ben drove, explaining the situation. She agreed to see me right away. The next 24 hours were a blur of doctor's appointments and police reports. The pills had indeed been tampered with, replaced with something that could have caused a miscarriage. The police took statements but said they needed more evidence to arrest her. Their advice? Restraining order, security system, new locks. We did all that, plus had cameras installed the next day. I spent hours scrolling through pregnancy forums, terrified of what could have happened if I'd taken those pills. Ben insisted on checking all our food and drinks, worried she might have tampered with something else while inside our house. That night, as we lay in bed, both too anxious to sleep, my phone buzzed. A text from my mom. I was only trying to save you from ruining your life. When will you understand I know what's best? I showed Ben, who immediately took the phone to add it to our police report file. When he came back, his expression was grim. Your mom's car just drove by, slowly. How do you know? I asked, panic rising. He pointed to his phone, showing the security camera footage. There was her distinctive blue sedan, creeping past our house at 1 a.m. We barely slept. The next morning, Ben installed additional locks while I called my boss to request working from home indefinitely. I explained the situation, leaving out the most disturbing details. My supervisor Barbara was surprisingly understanding, even offering to adjust deadlines for my upcoming maternity leave. Just as I hung up, our doorbell rang. Through the camera, I saw my cousin Mark, my mom's nephew. Ben opened the door cautiously. Hey, Mark said awkwardly. Aunt Patricia asked me to give you this. He handed over an envelope. She said it's important baby stuff. Did she tell you what's happening? I asked. Mark shrugged. Just that you're pregnant and she's excited to be a grandmother. Wanted to give you some financial help. I almost laughed at how successfully my mother had maintained her facade with the extended family. Mark, she tried to hurt my baby. We filed a police report. His eyes widened. What? No way. Aunt Patricia wouldn't. She pushed me hard when I told her I was pregnant. She broke into our house and tampered with my prenatal vitamins. Mark looked genuinely shocked. Holy shit. I had no idea. After he left, promising to keep his distance from my mom, we carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $20,000 and a note for the abortion and therapy afterward. Last chance. I ripped up both, hands shaking with rage. She's not giving up. We need to document everything, Ben said, taking photos of the torn check and note before throwing them away. Build a case? The next week was relatively quiet. Too quiet. My mom's messages stopped completely. Her car didn't appear on our security footage. I almost started to relax, focusing instead on setting up the nursery and attending birthing classes, but Ben remained vigilant, checking our security system multiple times daily. Then my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Hesitantly, I answered. Hello? Is this Jennifer Williams? A professional-sounding woman asked. Yes. Who's this? This is Taylor from Child Protective Services. We've received a concerning report about your living conditions and wanted to schedule a home visit. My blood ran cold. What report? We received anonymous information that you're using illegal substances during pregnancy and living in unsanitary conditions. I nearly dropped the phone. That's completely false. My mother is trying to. We're required to investigate all reports, Ms. Williams. We can come tomorrow at 2 p.m. After hanging up, I called our lawyer immediately. He assured us this was likely just a formality and offered to be present for the visit. Still, I spent the rest of the day cleaning our already clean house, terrified of what might happen if CPS believed my mother's lies. The CPS visit itself was brief and anticlimactic. Taylor seemed professional but unimpressed by the obviously false report. She commented on how well prepared we were for the baby and left after about 20 minutes. Our lawyer seemed satisfied, but warned us this might not be my mother's last attempt. He was right. The following week, my boss called me into an unexpected video meeting. Looking uncomfortable, she explained that someone had sent an anonymous email to HR claiming I was stealing company property to sell online. Barbara, you know that's not true, I said, fighting back tears. Of course I do, she assured me, but HR has to investigate. They'll need to check your work laptop. I surrendered my computer for investigation, knowing they'd find nothing but increasingly fearful of what my mother might try next. The company cleared me 3 days later, but the damage to my reputation had been done. Coworkers gave me strange looks during video meetings, and I heard whispers had started about what else I might be hiding. She's trying to isolate you, Ben said that night as I cried in frustration. Make you dependent on her. It's working, I admitted. I'm scared to leave the house, scared to talk to anyone. What if she contacts my friends next? My doctor? Ben held me tightly. We won't let her win. I tried to believe him, but my mother's invisible presence seemed to be everywhere. I jumped at every phone notification, flinched at unexpected knocks. The pregnancy, now in its 7th month, was becoming increasingly uncomfortable, and the stress wasn't helping. Then came the bombshell. Aunt Susan called, her voice strained. Your mother's been telling family members you're mentally unstable. She's saying the pregnancy triggered a psychotic episode, and you've been making up stories about her. What? Who believes her? Some do, Susan admitted. She's very convincing. She's shown them texts where you apologize for imagining things and ask for her forgiveness. I never sent those, I protested. I know, she probably faked them. But Jennifer, she's saying she's going to petition for emergency custody of the baby when it's born, claiming you're unfit. I felt like I might throw up. Can she do that? Not successfully with your documentation, but she could make things difficult, involve courts temporarily. After hanging up, I showed Ben our latest security footage, my mother driving by again, this time in daylight. I can't take this anymore, I told him. She's everywhere. She's poisoning everyone against me. Not everyone, Ben insisted. Susan believes you. Your friends believe you. I believe you. We have evidence. The next day brought another escalation. My childhood pediatrician called, sounding concerned. Jennifer, your mother contacted me. She's worried about your mental health during pregnancy. Doctor. Casey, she's lying, I said desperately. She's been harassing us, trying to hurt the baby. There was a pause. That's not what she described. Jennifer, pregnancy can sometimes trigger mental health issues. Would you consider coming in to talk? I felt a surge of betrayal. This man had treated me for 18 years, and he was believing my mother over me. I have a new doctor now, I said coldly, and hung up. She's building a case, I told Ben that night, panic rising, getting people from my past to vouch for her version of events. Ben paced our living room. We need to go on the offensive. We have the tampered vitamins, the security footage, the threats via text. Let's take it to the police again. The officer we spoke to seemed more receptive this time, especially after seeing the vitamin analysis from the lab. He took detailed statements and promised to follow up. It wasn't an arrest, but it felt like movement. That small victory gave me enough courage to do something I'd been considering for weeks. I created a private social media post visible only to close friends and family, carefully documenting my mother's behavior with evidence attached. I explained her history, her hatred of children, and her escalating attempts to end my pregnancy. The responses were overwhelming. Friends offered safe places to stay. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years messaged their support. Even a few of my mother's friends reached out, saying they'd noticed concerning behavior but hadn't understood the extent. But the most surprising message came from my grandmother's former nurse, Eleanor. Your mother was severely abused, but there's something else you should know, she wrote. Your grandmother didn't just hate children. She suffered from a hereditary mental illness that worsened during and after pregnancy. Your mother may have the same condition, untreated. I showed the message to Ben. Do you think that's it? Some kind of postpartum psychosis that never got treated? It would explain a lot, he admitted, but it doesn't excuse anything she's done. No, I agreed, but maybe understanding it could help us predict what she'll do next. I asked Eleanor for more information, and she agreed to meet us for coffee the following day. I felt nervous leaving the house, constantly scanning for my mother's car, but the need for answers outweighed my fear. Eleanor was in her 70s, sharp-eyed and forthright. Your grandmother had what we now call bipolar disorder with postpartum psychosis. After having your mother, she became convinced children were evil entities sent to destroy her. She refused medication. And you think my mom has the same thing? I asked. Eleanor nodded solemnly. The patterns are identical. The paranoia about children, the manipulation, the inability to bond. She would need professional diagnosis, but yes, I believe so. That actually makes sense, I admitted. But knowing doesn't fix anything. She's still trying to hurt us. Knowledge is power, Eleanor said. If you understand what drives her, you might be able to protect yourself better. On our way home, Ben drove cautiously, checking multiple times to ensure we weren't being followed. I think we should stay with my parents for a while, he suggested, just until the baby comes. They live 3 hours away. Your mom wouldn't expect it. The idea of escaping, even temporarily, was tempting. Let me think about it, I said, not wanting to be pushed into another major decision. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Eleanor had said, about hereditary mental illness. Would I develop the same condition after giving birth? Would I suddenly hate my own child? The thought terrified me. Ben found me crying in the nursery at 3 a.m., sitting in the rocking chair we'd set up beside the crib. Hey, he said softly, kneeling beside me. What's wrong? What if I'm like her? I whispered. What if it's genetic and I can't control it? He took my hands firmly. Listen to me. You are not your mother. You've spent your whole life wanting children, loving them, and if anything does happen, we'll get help immediately. You won't face it alone. His words calmed me, but my peace was short-lived. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages from friends asking if I was okay. Confused, I scrolled through social media to find my mother had created a public post about me, claiming I was experiencing dangerous delusions during pregnancy, and asking people to report any sightings of me to her directly for my safety. The post included childhood photos of me, our address, and even my car's license plate number. She'd effectively put a target on my back for any stranger who might want to help. That's it, Ben said, furious after seeing the post. We're reporting this as harassment and endangerment, and we're staying with my parents starting tonight. This time, I didn't argue. We packed essential baby items and clothes while Ben contacted the police again. They promised to send someone to speak with my mother about the social media post, but wouldn't make any promises about consequences. Just as we finished loading the car, I spotted a familiar blue sedan turning onto our street. She's coming, I hissed, ducking back inside. Ben immediately locked the front door. Back door, he whispered, guiding me through the house. We slipped out the rear entrance just as my mother's car pulled into our driveway. From our backyard, we could hear her pounding on the front door, calling my name in a sickeningly sweet voice. Jennifer, honey, I know you're in there. I just want to talk. Heart pounding. We crept along our fence line to the neighbor's yard, then cut through to the next street where we'd parked our second car as a precaution. Ben helped me into the passenger seat, then drove us quietly away from the neighborhood. In the rearview mirror, I watched my mother's figure growing smaller as she continued knocking on our empty house. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. We were escaping, at least temporarily. My hands rested on my rounded belly, feeling my daughter kick against my palms. I made her a silent promise. I'll keep you safe. Always. Ben's parents welcomed us with open arms, setting us up in their finished basement with its separate entrance. They installed additional security cameras and promised not to tell anyone our location. For the first time since the confrontation with my mother, I felt secure. The next week passed in relative peace. I worked remotely, took walks with Ben's mom around their quiet neighborhood, and finished buying the last essentials for the baby. My mother's text messages continued, alternating between pleading and threatening, but from 3 hours away, they seemed less immediate, less frightening. Then came the knock on the basement door. Ben answered while I hung back. Nervous despite the security cameras that should have warned us of visitors, it was Ben's dad looking troubled. There's someone here to see you, he said quietly. Says she's Jennifer's aunt. My heart raced. Susan? He shook his head. Says her name is Linda. I froze. I don't have an Aunt Linda. Ben immediately tensed. Dad, don't let her in. Call the police. But it was too late. Behind his father, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure. My mother had somehow tracked us down and was now standing at the basement entrance. There you are, she said, her voice eerily calm. I've been so worried. For a second, I was literally frozen in place, like actual deer in headlights frozen. My brain couldn't process how she'd found us. Ben stepped between us immediately, his body tense like he was ready for anything. You need to leave, he said, his voice deadly serious. Now. My mom's face twisted into this fake, confused expression. I don't understand why you're being so hostile. I'm just checking on my daughter and grandchild. Ben's dad looked completely bewildered. I'm sorry. I thought she showed me pictures of you two together. Call the police, I told him, finally finding my voice. She's not supposed to be here. My mom rolled her eyes dramatically. Jennifer, stop with the theatrics. This is exactly what I've been telling everyone. The pregnancy is making you unstable. I felt a surge of rage that overcame my fear. You broke into our house and tampered with my prenatal vitamins. You called CPS with false reports. Ben's dad's expression changed instantly. He pulled out his phone and stepped away to call 911. My mom's fake smile vanished too. I was trying to help you, she hissed, dropping the act completely. That child will ruin everything we have. We don't have anything, I shot back. We never did. You're manipulative and dangerous, and you're never going to meet my daughter. Her eyes narrowed, and I swear I saw something snap behind them. She lunged forward, suddenly reaching for me. Ben blocked her path, but she was quick and determined. She darted around him, catching him off guard, and grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. You ungrateful little bitch, she spat. After After everything I sacrificed. Ben's mom appeared then, wielding a baseball bat she'd grabbed from somewhere. "Let go of her right now," she ordered, looking absolutely terrifying despite being the sweet 60-something woman who baked cookies for the neighborhood kids. My mom didn't let go. Instead, she yanked me toward her and I felt a sharp pain in my abdomen. Like, seriously painful. I gasped and doubled over, which made my mom release me out of surprise. Ben caught me as I started to sink to the floor. "Something's wrong," I whispered, panicking. "The baby." Ben's dad was still on the phone with 911. "We need an ambulance too," he called out. "Pregnant woman in distress." My mom just stood there, watching me with this weird mix of triumph and horror on her face. Ben's mom kept the bat pointed at her while Ben lowered me carefully onto the couch. The pain was coming in waves now, and I was terrified it was premature labor. "It's too early," I kept saying. "She can't come yet. She's not ready." Ben held my hand, looking as scared as I felt. "Help is coming. Just breathe." What felt like hours but was probably only minutes later, we heard sirens approaching. My mom suddenly seemed to realize the severity of what was happening. She made a move toward the door, but Ben's mom blocked her path. "You're not going anywhere," she said firmly. The police arrived first, followed immediately by paramedics. Everything became a blur of questions, examinations, and decisions. The paramedics determined I needed to go to the hospital immediately. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I saw the police putting my mom in handcuffs while she screamed about how I was lying, how I was the crazy one. The hospital trip is mostly a haze in my memory. I remember the doctors rushing around, the ultrasound showing my daughter's heartbeat, thank God, and the diagnosis, partial placental abruption. Not catastrophic, but dangerous. They kept me for observation, pumped me full of medications to prevent premature labor, and monitored the baby constantly. Ben never left my side. He slept in that uncomfortable hospital chair for 3 straight nights. His parents took turns bringing us food and clean clothes. On the second day, a police officer came to take my statement. She was surprisingly understanding. "Your mother is being held on multiple charges," she told me. "Breaking and entering, tampering with medication, assault, violation of the restraining order, and now potentially causing bodily harm to you and endangering your unborn child." I felt weirdly numb hearing all that. Like, I should have been relieved, but all I could think about was making sure my baby was okay. "Will she stay in jail?" I asked. The officer hesitated. "For now, but you should prepare for the possibility of bail. We'll notify you immediately if that happens." After the officer left, Ben squeezed my hand. "We'll figure it out, one step at a time." The doctors released me after 4 days with strict instructions for bed rest until my due date. No work, no stress, minimal movement. Ben's parents insisted we continue staying with them so they could help take care of me. I was actually grateful. Their house felt safe in a way ours no longer did. A week after the hospital incident, Aunt Susan came to visit. She brought a care package and looked absolutely devastated when she saw me. "I'm so sorry," she said, hugging me carefully. "I should have warned you about her earlier. I should have done more." I shook my head. "You tried. You were the only one who ever tried." Susan had news about my mom. Apparently the judge had denied bail, considering her a flight risk and danger to others. She'd be held until trial, which was scheduled for after my due date. Susan told me, "The prosecutor wants to know if you'd consider allowing a psychiatric evaluation as part of the case. They think it might explain her behavior, though it won't excuse it." I thought about what Eleanor had said about hereditary mental illness. Yes, I decided. I want to know if she has what my grandmother had. The next few weeks passed in a strange limbo. I followed doctor's orders, staying mostly in bed and trying not to stress. Easier said than done. Ben worked from home to stay with me. His parents were amazing, bringing me books, keeping me company, and helping prepare for the baby. My boss Barbara was understanding about my extended leave, especially after I explained the full situation. My coworkers sent a giant care package. Friends visited when I felt up to it. For the first time in my life, I felt truly supported by a community of people who cared about me. At 38 weeks, just 2 weeks before my due date, I went into labor naturally. It was long and painful, but everything went smoothly. After 19 hours, our daughter came screaming into the world, perfectly healthy despite everything. We named her Lily, after Ben's grandmother. Holding her for the first time, I searched my heart for any trace of the illness that had afflicted my mother and grandmother. All I found was overwhelming love. I couldn't imagine ever wanting to hurt this tiny person, or thinking of her as a burden. Maybe the illness would never touch me, or maybe, unlike my mother, I'd recognize the pattern and would get help if I needed it. 3 days after Lily's birth, while we were still in the hospital, a social worker named Janet came to see us. She was kind but formal. "I understand your mother is currently incarcerated," she said, "but I need to inform you that she's attempting to assert grandparental rights." I nearly choked. "She what?" "It's standard procedure for me to investigate when such claims are made," Janet explained. "But given the circumstances and pending criminal charges, I can assure you her petition will almost certainly be denied." She interviewed us briefly, took some notes, and promised to recommend immediate dismissal of the claim. Before leaving, she paused at the door. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "in 20 years of doing this job, I've never seen a clearer case for denying visitation rights." A month after we brought Lily home, to Ben's parents' house, where we were still staying, we received 2 pieces of news on the same day. First, my mother's psychiatric evaluation had confirmed bipolar disorder with delusional features, similar to what my grandmother had suffered. Second, she'd accepted a plea deal, 2 years in a psychiatric facility followed by 3 years probation, during which she couldn't contact me or come within 500 feet of my family. I sat on the porch swing with Lily sleeping against my chest, trying to process my feelings. Relief, definitely. Sadness for the mother I never had. Worry about what would happen when she was eventually released. Ben joined me, putting his arm around my shoulders. "Penny, for your thoughts?" "I was just thinking about cycles," I said. "My grandmother hurt my mom hurt me, and I was so afraid I'd hurt Lily somehow. But you didn't," he pointed out. "You broke the cycle." I looked down at our sleeping daughter. "Yeah, I did." That weekend, we went back to our house for the first time in months. Ben's dad had hired people to install a serious security system. Cameras everywhere, motion sensors, the works. The locks had been changed, windows reinforced. It felt strange being back, but also right. While unpacking, I found the folder Aunt Susan had given me with my childhood photos. I sat on the floor of Lily's nursery and went through them one by one. In one, I was about 3, pushing a toy stroller with a doll inside. My mom wasn't in any of the pictures, of course. I looked up at Lily sleeping in her crib. "I promised to be in your pictures," I whispered. Over the next few months, we settled into a new normal. I returned to work part-time. Ben's parents visited weekly. Aunt Susan became a regular fixture in our lives, delighted to be a great aunt. The court formally denied my mother's petition for grandparental rights, citing the clear and convincing evidence of potential harm to the child. On Lily's first birthday, we had a small party, just family and close friends. As I watched her smash her cake with chubby hands, laughing hysterically, I felt completely at peace for the first time in maybe ever. The doorbell rang, and I tensed momentarily, an old habit that hadn't quite died. But it was just Eleanor, the nurse who'd helped us understand my family's history. She'd become something of a mentor to me. "How are you feeling?" she asked, hugging me. "Good," I said, and realized I meant it. "Really good, actually." She nodded approvingly. "You know, the test of breaking a cycle isn't just avoiding the obvious mistakes. It's creating something better in their place." I watched Ben swing Lily around while she giggled uncontrollably. Susan was taking photos. Ben's parents were setting up more food. "I think we're doing okay on that front," I said. Later that night, after everyone had gone and Lily was asleep, Ben and I sat on the couch with a glass of wine. "I've been thinking," I said cautiously. "Maybe in a year or so we could try for another baby." Ben looked surprised. "Really? After everything?" I nodded. "I always wanted a big family, remember? I'm not going to let fear change that." He smiled and kissed me. "Whatever you want. I'm with you all the way." I leaned against him, thinking about how far we'd come. My mother would be in treatment for another year before her probation began. I knew we'd face that challenge when it came, but for now, we were safe. We were happy. And most importantly, we'd broken the cycle for good. I didn't need my mother to be whole. I had built my own family, created my own support system, and Lily would grow up surrounded by love, never doubting for a moment that she was wanted and cherished. That was my victory, and nobody, not even my mother, could take it away from me.